Your child seems fine. They're meeting milestones, they smile, they play. But something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it. Maybe they don't respond to their name consistently. Or they line up toys in perfect rows instead of playing with them. Or they seem overwhelmed in situations other kids handle easily. You mention it to friends, family, even your pediatrician, and they tell you, every child develops differently. You're worrying too much. But what if your instinct is right? What if there are subtle signs that everyone, including professionals, is missing? Today, I'm going to show you 6 early autism signs that often go unnoticed, signs that appear long before the obvious ones everyone talks about. Let's dive in. Most parents know that not responding to their name can be a red flag. But here's what makes this sign subtle. It's inconsistent. Your child responds to their name sometimes, when they're not focused on something else, when the room is quiet, when they're in the right mood. So you think, they can hear me. They just choose not to listen. But here's what might actually be happening. For children on the autism spectrum, filtering competing stimuli is genuinely difficult. When they're engaged with something interesting, their brain struggles to shift attention, even to their own name. It's not defiance, it's neurological. What to watch for? Does your child respond to their name less than 50% of the time by 12 months? Do they respond more reliably to other sounds, like the TV turning on or a package opening, than to their name? This pattern matters because typically developing children are highly responsive to their name by their first birthday. It's one of the earliest forms of social engagement. If you're seeing inconsistent responses, especially when paired with other signs on this list, it's worth discussing with a developmental specialist. Most people know that lining up toys can be an autism sign, but they think it needs to be constant, rigid, obvious. The subtle version looks different. Your child plays normally sometimes. They push cars, they hug dolls, but then you notice they spend an unusual amount of time organizing, categorizing, or examining objects in ways that don't match typical play. Maybe they spin the wheels on cars repeatedly instead of driving them. Maybe they sort blocks by color over and over instead of building. Maybe they're fascinated by opening and closing doors, turning lights on and off, or watching the washing machine spin. This isn't about never engaging in pretend play. It's about the ratio. How much time do they spend in repetitive, sensory-based exploration versus imaginative, purposeful play? Here's why this matters. Pretend play requires something called theory of mind, the ability to imagine different perspectives and scenarios. Children on the spectrum often find this challenging, so they gravitate toward predictable cause and effect activities. What to watch for? By 18 to 24 months, does your child engage in pretend play? Do they feed a doll, put a stuffed animal to bed, or pretend a block is a phone? Or do they primarily manipulate objects in repetitive sensory ways? If pretend play is minimal or absent, and they prefer repetitive patterns, this is worth noting. Here's one that confuses parents constantly. My child isn't antisocial. They love being around people. And that's true. But here's the subtle difference. They love being around people on their terms, in their preferred way. A child with autism might enjoy running around with other kids at the playground, but not actually playing with them. They're enjoying the energy, the movement, the presence, but not engaging in reciprocal play. They might love adults, because adults follow their lead, answer their questions, give them attention. But peer relationships? Much harder. Or they might seem social at home with family, but struggle significantly with peers at preschool or playgroups. The key is reciprocity. Are they initiating and responding in back and forth ways? Or are they directing the interaction entirely on their terms? What to watch for? By age 2 to 3, does your child show interest in other children? Do they try to engage them? Do they show joy when playing together? Or do they simply play parallel, side by side, but not together? Do they show and share things with others spontaneously, or only when prompted? Spontaneous sharing is a crucial social milestone that children with autism often skip. Sensory issues are becoming more widely known, but parents often miss them because they seem like personality quirks or preferences. Your child hates loud noises? They're just sensitive. They only eat beige foods? They're picky. They constantly jump, crash, spin? They're energetic. But when these patterns are extreme, persistent, and interfering with daily life, they're more than preferences. They're sensory processing differences that often accompany autism. Sensory seeking might look like constant movement, jumping, spinning, crashing into things, touching everything, seeking specific textures, making repetitive sounds, or noises, smelling, or mouthing objects beyond typical toddler exploration. Sensory avoiding might look like distress, over clothing textures, tags, seams, covering ears, at sounds others barely notice, extreme resistance to hair washing, nail cutting, toothbrushing, refusing certain food textures entirely, avoiding messy play like finger painting or sand. What to watch for? Are these sensory responses interfering with daily functioning? Is getting dressed a daily battle? Is trying new foods essentially impossible? Do certain sounds or environments cause genuine distress rather than mild discomfort? When sensory differences are significant and persistent, they often indicate underlying neurological differences worth investigating. Many parents are thrilled when their child starts talking. Finally, language is emerging. They're saying words, even sentences. But then you notice something odd. They're repeating phrases from their favorite show. They're echoing your questions back instead of answering. They're using language that seems advanced but somehow scripted. This is called echolalia, and it's incredibly common in autism, but it's often missed because the child is talking. Immediate echolalia sounds like this. You. Do you want a snack? Child. Want a snack? Delayed echolalia sounds like this. Child randomly says, to infinity and beyond. From Toy Story. Or, please remain seated until the ride comes to a complete stop. From a theme park. They're using language, but it's borrowed, it's memorized, it's not flexible, spontaneous communication. Sometimes scripted language sounds sophisticated. Your 3-year-old is using complex phrases, but when you listen closely, it's always the same phrases in the same situations. What to watch for? Does your child repeat words or phrases out of context? Do they echo questions instead of answering them? Do they rely heavily on memorized scripts from shows or books? This doesn't mean they won't develop flexible language, but it's a pattern worth noting, especially when combined with other signs. All toddlers struggle with transitions sometimes, but children with autism often have extreme difficulty shifting from one activity to another, even when the next activity is something they enjoy. The subtle version looks like this. Your child is playing with blocks. You say, time to go outside. They love outside. But instead of excitement, you get a meltdown. Or bedtime becomes a 2-hour battle every single night, requiring the exact same routine in the exact same order. Or everything falls apart. Or leaving the playground causes a complete breakdown, no matter how much advance warning you gave. This happens because many children with autism crave predictability and struggle with the cognitive flexibility required to shift gears. Their brain gets stuck on what they're currently doing. They also often struggle with time concepts. In 5 minutes means nothing to them, so transitions feel sudden and jarring, even when you prepared them. What to watch for? Are transitions consistently difficult, even with preparation? Does your child need extensive warning and support for even small changes? Do they require rigid routines? And does any deviation cause significant distress? When transition difficulty is extreme and persistent, and when it's paired with need for sameness and predictability, it's worth exploring further. First, take a breath. Recognizing these signs doesn't mean you failed. It means you're paying attention. You're advocating for your child. Second, understand this. Early identification changes everything. The earlier children receive support, the better their outcomes. So if your instinct is telling you something's off, trust it. Here's what to do. Document what you're seeing. Keep notes. Take videos. Capture the patterns you're noticing. This helps professionals understand what's happening. Request a developmental screening. Don't wait for your pediatrician to bring it up. You can request one. In many places, you can even self-refer for early intervention evaluations without a doctor's referral. Don't let anyone dismiss your concerns. If a professional tells you to wait and see, but you're genuinely worried, seek a second opinion. You know your child best. Remember, a diagnosis isn't a tragedy. It's information. It's access to support. It's understanding why certain things are hard and how to help. And if you go through evaluation and your child isn't on the spectrum, you haven't wasted anyone's time. You've been a careful, attentive parent. That's exactly what your child needs. These 6 signs are subtle. They're easy to miss. They're often explained away as personality, temperament, or normal variation, and sometimes that's exactly what they are. But sometimes they're early indicators of autism that, when recognized early, can lead to life-changing support. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, investigate. Ask questions. Seek evaluations. Be persistent. Which of these signs surprised you? Have you noticed any of these patterns in your child? Drop a comment below. Your experience might help another parent who's wondering the same thing. If this video was helpful, please like and subscribe. Share it with parents who might need this information. Remember, this content is educational only and not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult qualified healthcare providers for developmental concerns. Early recognition, early support, better outcomes. You're doing the right thing by learning and paying attention. See you in the next video.